So now we'll take a look at the chronological format. Your name goes at the top and that gets aligned to itself, followed by your contact details, address, landline if you've got one, mobile and email. And you don't need to write CV or resume because that's just a waste of space. It should be obvious that that's what this is. And after that you'll have your summary or profile or objective, and we'll talk about that a bit later in more detail. So the next section is employment in reverse chronological order, company and location, job title and dates. You might call this work history or professional experience instead. And underneath each job you'd write a short paragraph, perhaps a couple of lines saying what your duties and responsibilities were, and that goes underneath. And then you might have bullet points with examples of the skills that you used, the value that you added to the company, and any achievements that you made. And next comes higher education. So you'd have the college, the course or qualification, and the dates, and then a short description of the course with the skills and qualifications if you haven't mentioned those above. And you'd use the same format for high school if you didn't go to college or if the job requires high school qualifications. And then for short courses you can use the same layout with a short description of the course if it was relevant and skills that you picked up. Voluntary work, so anything that was solid, useful experience, put this in the same format as your work history. And it can replace employment if you have no work experience, as long as it's relevant and substantial. And otherwise, of course, it can go further down in your resume, particularly if it's not relevant to the job. But it can show other things like a good positive attitude and other skills. So the order of the sections, usually work will go first, but if you're a college leaver, education might be more important. And if you're not sure which section to put first, think about which one has the most relevant keywords, because it might be volunteering and education. So should you include interests? Sometimes they're included in the UK, but really only if they're interesting or unusual. And it can be quite good to put them in because they can show personality, and that can be helpful in an interview, give you a talking point. Never put socialising. Sounds as if you're going to be down the pub every night. Reading, films, walking sounds a bit boring. Make it more interesting, something like reading Russian literature or watching Chinese cinema. Or instead of walking, you could say you walked across the US or from Land's End to John O'Groats taking photographs of the landscape. It could be for a book or a website, an exhibition, or perhaps to raise money for charity. So you can make your interest a bit more interesting if possible. And referees, don't add these to your CV. Keep them in your reference documents. And you really don't need to write references on request. It should be obvious that if you are asked for references that you will provide them, and that usually comes a bit further along, either when you have an interview or when you're offered the job. So do make sure that your referees are still willing to give you a reference, and be sure that you've got the correct spelling and job title and so on. Now the easiest way to show you what a resume format looks like is by example. So in the next lectures you can download both an example and a template